Talked a lot about skating towards where the puck is going, and I think a lot of provinces can say, yeah, they're doing that with rebates to stack on to what the federal government rebate is, but not all provinces, including Ontario, are doing that. They haven't shown an appetite for that. Do you have a message for provinces that don't seem to be skating to where the puck is going?
Get on board. That would be my message. I mean, especially in Ontario, where with the Ontario government, the federal government is making multi-billion-dollar investment in the EV supply chain. There's no reason the government of Ontario shouldn't do like BC's doing, like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Quebec. There used to be an incentive program in Ontario. We would welcome Ontario bringing one back.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parts Talk. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now today we unravel the intricacies of a narrative that demands our attention. A narrative that blinds us to alternative pathways for energy transition. The urgency imposed by governments creates a false sense of panic, steering us exclusively towards EVs, wind and solar. Yet, in this mad rush, the door slams shut on exploration of diverse alternatives. The inconvenience of electrical vehicles, EVs, when left to a free market, hardly stands a chance against the efficiency of internal combustion engine. Mind you, the ICE vehicles have been around for over 100 years. Now, in a rational world, new technologies should compete on a level playing field, allowing only the most viable to thrive. However, today the entire West tumbles blindly towards an electric future, an assumption that, at least to me, lacks the clarity it claims. So we're going to try and see clarity in the disclosures of electric vehicles and net zero. But first, subscribe, be a part of the dialogue, and enable notifications to never miss our explorations into the uncharted territories of energy narratives. So let's get into this first video, and you're going to find it really interesting.
So our government, in all of its wisdom, has decided to force us all to buy electric vehicles. Instead of us being as wealthy as Saudi Arabia and being among the wealthiest nations of the world, they instead decide to tax us in its taxation by forcing us to buy more expensive vehicles, where we can only own EVs by 2035. But I'm going to give a quick explanation why it's a terrible idea and why removing that choice is actually an awful policy. Well, for starters, people don't want them. It's not for everyone. Don't believe me? Well, Ford does, because they've realized their sales targets have been so terrible that they've actually cut back on their EV plan. So much so that they cut their EV production of the F-150 by 50%. And let's talk about the infrastructure. We are simply not ready to support a full EV economy. And it's not just Canada, it's the US that's not ready either. But this policy has been done in order to justify the most ridiculous subsidy ever made to any automobile manufacturer in history. In fact, it's the most ridiculous subsidy ever made, I think, in history to any company, where the government gave $13 billion to a corporation so they can set up, with outside workers, not Canadians, an EV plant in Canada. And the reality is they actually cause 80% more problems than conventional cars and trucks. And this is according to a study done by Consumer Reports. The reality is that the ownership cost of an EV is actually more than a gas-powered vehicle. More expensive to buy, and longer term, more expensive to maintain.
And don't forget the mechanics who are leaving the industry. You won't have enough technicians around to work on these vehicles unless you're going back to the dealer. So no more side garages, no more small shops. It's going to get a lot more stickier than it is right now.
Especially when you have to replace those parts. Don't believe me? Recognize this guy here? Because I got a bill for almost $29,000 to replace a battery that should have been replaced for free by Tesla because they had a manufacturing defect where the AC condensate would leak on top of the battery. And guess what? Those nuts and bolts, the screws, the thing that kept out the elements outside of the battery, all that rusted. You'd think they'd be smarter about it, but they weren't. And this is happening all over the world. It's not just me that needed a battery replaced. It's folks around the world. And they bring up a good point that whatever you think you're saving on gas, put that to the side, because the second your battery needs to be replaced, all those savings and more are all out the window. But let's quickly talk about these cost savings. If you take a
But before you go, it goes on to the other thing. Remember, also in the EV used market, where to change when the battery goes to replace that battery, you're going to get a bill of upwards of up to $50,000 just to replace the battery and to effect labor on it. That's inclusive of labor, so to speak. So basically, you have to buy a brand new vehicle. $50,000, you can get an internal combustion engine vehicle with all the bells and whistles to go along with it. Now think about that. And that's one of the reasons why the EV market, the used EV market, is not taking off. It's relatively getting high, and not to mention insurance costs to go along with it, because the premiums are going to be higher, as there are reports of a lot of fires have stemmed from electric vehicles. They're hiding a lot of them, but people have been reporting them. But you have to go to alternate news source. Mainstream media, you won't get it as much. One and two of them are there, but you won't get it as much.
Quick look at the Hummer EV, you'll see that to charge it 100%, it would cost you over $100. This is a great video I saw a while back where he sat at a charging station for 41 minutes and only got 64 miles. He said the cost was worse and that the whole thing is a scam, and that paying to fill up the Hummer EV costs more than filling it up with gas. This is what you can now expect in 2035. You are going to be taxed by being forced to buy more expensive vehicles. And all of this is based on the lie that it causes zero pollution. Get ready for a shock. There's some brutal environmental impacts to mining for cobalt, which is needed in order to produce electric battery cars. So now you're going to have less options. You're going to have more expenses. Your batteries are going to be expensive to be replaced. What is the actual upside benefit to this other than posturing? Given the fact that we have the world's third largest oil reserves, and on a global economic scale, our levels of pollution are absolutely immaterial, I would rather see us be the richest nation and have the lowest taxes among the free world, instead of being taxed and given no options but to buy EVs. The whole thing is just a scam.
And not to mention the amount of old infrastructure here in Canada that has to be remodified to facilitate charging infrastructure. Now, historically, major industrial changes stemmed from improvements, making our lives easier, better, quicker, or cheaper. But today, however, a shift is driven not by the benefits, but an ideology that warns of climate Armageddon unless we urgently decarbonize. This claim, however, is far from reality, yet it coerces governments and individuals into a race for electrification without considering potential alternatives.
How dare you!
Now, without the false urgency, we could explore energy possibilities at a reasonable pace. One such prospect lies in synthetic fuels, a lower emissions profile with the convenience of current fuels. And imagine a world where existing vehicles seamlessly transition into a cleaner future, or utilize what has already been tried, tested, and proven, which is an example here, the Toyota 1690 rule: 90 hybrids for every one battery electric vehicle manufactured. They have been running around for the last 20 plus years. What you're going to see in this next video is how the Canadian government, the current administration, is adamant that EVs are the way that they are going.
Chris McDermott loves driving his electric vehicle, as long as it's in Quebec.
We're not ready for the transition because the charging infrastructure in certain provinces, Quebec's there, but in certain provinces like Ontario, it's not there.
But it will need to be soon. The federal government is going all in on EVs.
There's no mistaking it. We are at a tipping point.
Ottawa says it has finalized regulations to push manufacturers to make fewer gas guzzlers and more battery-powered motors.
The government of Canada is helping to ensure we don't get left behind.
The new rules apply to new cars, SUVs, and light trucks, but not used ones. Plug-in gas hybrids will qualify, but the deadline for automakers is strict. In 2026, 1 in 5 vehicles sold in Canada must be electric. In 2030, that's 3 in 5. By 2035, all new stock at dealerships must be electric. But some worry they will be financially out of reach for many.
Vehicle prices would need to come down by about a third or even half of what they are today in order to be for electric vehicles to be affordable at the very mass market level.
Ottawa and some provincial governments offer purchase incentives. For those that don't, the Environment Minister had a message.
Get on board. That would be my message.
In other words, you don't have a choice. That's the direct message he's saying. No need to beat around it. It's coming, just deal with it.
I mean, especially in Ontario.
Automakers will need to earn credits to comply with the new rules. That can be done by building charging infrastructure. But the big 3 car makers have some concerns.
There's only 345,000 electric vehicles on the roads today. That is not enough volume to make a charging station a profitable business.
This driver says charging needs to be a political priority.
What needs to be done was what Quebec did starting 10 years ago.
He says setting EV targets without a reliable way to power them is like putting the cart before the horse. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
You know, gone are the days when we had leaders who actually listened to the voice of the people. And the charging station infrastructure not being there, one message you can get from that, you can derive from that, is just follow the money. That's all I'm getting from all of this. And based on the prices of EVs and how that economists were saying that EV prices need to come down, car prices, they never usually come down. There's usually an average because of oversupply. And oversupply usually comes from the used car market. That's basically what it is. What you're going to be seeing after 2035 is the big divide. The have and the have-nots. And it's going to be totally about affordability at the end of the day. So in the pursuit of truth, let's dismantle the dogma surrounding rapid electrification and open our minds to a spectrum of the possibilities. The future may hold innovations far beyond our current imagination. We're not seeing it. We're told EVs are the way to go without looking at what's the next best alternatives out there. And it is a part of the decision-making process which is not being utilized. And with all that said, let me know your thoughts below. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. Please smash that like button on your way out. It will only take you 1.5 seconds to do so. Until next time.